October 9th, 2020. A quiet Friday morning in Oak Cliff, Texas. Jennifer Faith walks out of her home with her husband Jamie, their dog trotting beside them. 1 minute into their routine walk, 7 gunshots shatter the morning silence. Jamie Faith, a 49-year-old American Airlines technology director, lies bleeding on the pavement. His wife Jennifer screams hysterically as a masked gunman tackles her to the ground before fleeing in a black pickup truck with a distinctive T decal. But what if I told you that the woman crying over her dying husband's body had orchestrated the entire murder? That she had manipulated a brain-damaged veteran into believing her husband was abusing her? That she had been planning this execution for months while sleeping next to her victim every night? This is the story of Jennifer Faith, a woman who turned love into a weapon, trust into betrayal, and a morning dog walk into a calculated assassination. A case so twisted that even the federal judge called her pure evil before sentencing her to life in prison. Welcome to True Crime Chronicles. I'm your host, and today we're exploring the Jennifer Faith case, where a wife's affair turned deadly and a husband's trust cost him everything. Jamie and Jennifer Faith appear to have it all. Married for over a decade, they lived in a modest home in Oak Cliff, a historic neighborhood in Dallas, Texas. Jamie worked as a technology director for American Airlines, a stable job that provided for their family. Jennifer seemed like the devoted wife, always posting happy photos on social media, talking about their future plans, their shared dreams. But beneath this facade of domestic bliss, something had been rotting for years. Something that would ultimately destroy everything they had built together. You see, Jennifer Faith had been living a double life. While Jamie went to work every day, trusting his wife completely, Jennifer had been conducting a secret affair with a man from her past. Not just any man, a disabled Army veteran named Darren Ruben Lopez, someone she called her one and only love. Lopez lived in Cumberland Furnace, Tennessee, over 300 miles away from Dallas. But distance meant nothing to Jennifer. She had been sending him money, gifts, even providing him with credit cards that she secretly paid off. She was financing her own betrayal with money that should have been going to her family. But here's where it gets disturbing. Lopez wasn't just Jennifer's lover. He was a man struggling with traumatic brain injury from his military service in Iraq. A vulnerable person who trusted Jennifer completely. And Jennifer was about to exploit that trust in the most horrific way imaginable. In the months leading up to that fatal October morning, Jennifer had been carefully laying the groundwork for something unthinkable. She created fake email accounts, assumed false identities, and began spinning a web of lies that would end in blood on a Dallas sidewalk. The question investigators would later ask was simple. How long had Jennifer been planning to kill her husband? And more importantly, why? To understand what happened on that October morning, we need to go back 7 months earlier. That's when Jennifer Faith began crafting what investigators would later call one of the most elaborate deception schemes they'd ever encountered. Using 2 fake email accounts, Jennifer assumed the identities of her own husband and one of her friends. But these weren't playful role-playing games. Jennifer was about to convince a brain-damaged veteran to commit murder. The emails Jennifer sent to Lopez painted a horrifying picture. She told him that Jamie Faith was physically and sexually abusing her. She described beatings, assaults, and psychological torture. To make her lies more convincing, she downloaded stock images of injuries from the internet and attached them to the emails, claiming they were photos of her own wounds. But remember, investigators would later confirm that none of this abuse ever occurred. Jennifer Faith was never abused by her husband. These were elaborate fabrications designed to manipulate a vulnerable man into becoming a killer. Think about the psychology here. Jennifer wasn't just lying to Lopez. She was weaponizing his military training, his protective instincts, his sense of honor. She was turning his desire to protect the woman he loved into a murder plot. And it worked. Over the course of 7 months, Jennifer fed Lopez a steady diet of these fake abuse stories. She portrayed herself as a helpless victim trapped in a dangerous marriage. She made Lopez believe that the only way to save her was to eliminate the threat. her husband. But Jennifer's manipulation went even deeper. She wasn't just lying about abuse. She was also planning their future together. In text messages, the pair discussed using Jamie's life insurance money to buy a home in Tennessee. Jennifer had even initiated a claim with Metropolitan Life Insurance Company for approximately $629,000 in death benefits. She was literally planning to profit from her husband's murder. Now, I want you to imagine what this looked like from Jamie Faith's perspective. He's going to work every day, coming home to a wife who kisses him hello, who makes dinner, who sleeps beside him at night. He has no idea that she's been planning his execution for months. He has no idea that she's been telling another man that he's a monster who deserves to die. The betrayal is almost incomprehensible. But Jennifer Faith wasn't finished yet. The most shocking part of her plan was still to come. October 9th, 2020. 7:30 morgens. Jennifer and Jamie Faith exit their home for what appears to be a routine morning dog walk. It's a beautiful autumn day in Oak Cliff. Neighbors are starting their morning routines. The streets are quiet. But 300 miles away in Tennessee, Darren Lopez is already on the road. He's been driving through the night, his black Nissan Titan pickup truck heading toward Dallas. In his mind, he's not going to commit murder. He's going to rescue the woman he loves from her abusive husband. Lopez arrives in Dallas and does something that reveals the premeditated nature of this crime. He doesn't go directly to the Faith home. Instead, he parks at a neighbor's house and waits. He's conducting surveillance, watching the house, learning the family's routine. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a military-style operation. At exactly 7:31 a.m., 1 minute into their walk, Lopez strikes. He emerges from his hiding spot and opens fire on Jamie Faith. 7 shots ring out in the quiet neighborhood. Jamie, who probably never saw it coming, collapses on the sidewalk. But Lopez isn't finished. He turns the gun on Jennifer, tackling her to the ground. From the outside, it looks like he's trying to kill her too. Jennifer screams, fights back, appears to be struggling for her life. But here's what investigators would later discover. This attack on Jennifer was staged. Lopez wasn't trying to kill her. He was helping her establish an alibi. The tackle, the struggle, the apparent attempt on her life. It was all theater designed to make Jennifer look like a victim instead of a perpetrator. Surveillance audio captured Jennifer's screams during the attack. Video footage showed her crying hysterically afterward. To anyone watching, she looked like a traumatized widow who had barely escaped with her own life. The performance was so convincing that when Dallas Police Detective Chris Walton interviewed Jennifer that morning, she gave what appeared to be a heartbroken widow's testimony. I turned around and I just saw this person shoot and shoot. I couldn't believe I didn't know him. Like why? A lot of shots, 5, 6, maybe I feel like. And he just kept going and I'm like, stop it. And then I saw the person turn and like just dark eyes coming toward me. And so I yelled no, and I started to run, and he tackled me to the ground. He was trying to attack me the whole time I was screaming. But investigators were about to uncover evidence that would expose Jennifer's lies. Evidence that would reveal the true scope of her deception. Evidence that would prove she was never a victim at all. She was the mastermind behind a cold-blooded execution. In the immediate aftermath of Jamie Faith's murder, Dallas police launched a massive investigation. They had a clear description of the suspect vehicle, a black pickup truck with a distinctive T decal on the back window. This detail would prove crucial to cracking the case. But as investigators began digging deeper, they started noticing inconsistencies in Jennifer's story. Small details that didn't quite add up. Behavior that seemed unusual for a grieving widow. The first red flag came when investigators discovered that Jennifer had been in contact with someone from her past. Phone records showed extensive communication with a man named Darren Lopez in Tennessee. When they ran his name, they discovered he was a disabled Army veteran who owned a black pickup truck. The second red flag was even more disturbing. Jennifer had launched a GoFundMe campaign called Support Jennifer Faith to help with expenses following her husband's death. But investigators discovered that money from this campaign was being used to pay off credit cards that Jennifer had given to Lopez. Think about that for a moment. Well-meaning people were donating money to help a grieving widow, and she was using those donations to support her husband's killer. But the most damning evidence came from Jennifer's own actions. When she learned that police were looking for a truck with a T decal, she did something that revealed her true involvement in the crime. She appeared on Dallas's ABC affiliate WFAA and made a public plea for help finding the killer. She looked directly into the camera and begged the public to help investigators locate the truck with the decal. But immediately after the interview, Jennifer texted Lopez with a warning. "I woke up in a bit of a panic. Something is eating away at me telling me you need to take the sticker out of the back window of the truck. I don't normally overreact like this. Really think you need to get that sticker off ASAP like today." Lopez removed the sticker the following day. Do you see what happened here? Jennifer went on television and publicly asked for help finding a truck with a specific decal, then immediately warned the driver to remove that decal. She was actively obstructing the investigation into her own husband's murder. But investigators were closing in. They had phone records, financial records, and a growing body of evidence that painted a picture of conspiracy. What they discovered next would expose the full scope of Jennifer's deception. In January 2021, just 3 months after the murder, investigators asked Jennifer to come in for questioning. Her response revealed just how deep her deception ran. January 10th, 2021. Jennifer Faith knows the walls are closing in. Investigators have been asking questions, following paper trails, connecting dots. She's been called in for questioning the next day, and she knows this could be the end of her elaborate deception. So she does what she's been doing for months. She lies. Jennifer sends a text message to Lopez that investigators would later use as evidence of consciousness of guilt. "Don't text me Monday. I'm going to factory reset my phone on Sunday night after deleting texts." But Jennifer was too late. Federal agents had already been building a case against both her and Lopez. They had identified the fake email accounts, traced the financial transactions, and connected Lopez to the murder weapon. On January 11th, 2021, just one day after Jennifer tried to destroy evidence, ATF agents arrested Darren Lopez at his home in Cumberland Furnace, Tennessee. The firearm used to kill Jamie Faith was recovered inside Lopez's residence. But even facing arrest, Jennifer couldn't stop lying. Even with Lopez in custody, she continued to maintain her web of deception. She sent messages through a third party, proclaiming her loyalty to the man who had murdered her husband. "I am with him, will always be with him regardless of whatever has happened. I needed to be cautious because every communication is being monitored. Please tell him ASAP, I will always be his." Think about what this means. Jennifer Faith's husband had been dead for just 4 months, and she was already professing eternal love for his killer. She was more concerned about supporting Lopez than she was about getting justice for Jamie. On February 2nd, 2021, Jennifer Faith was arrested and charged with obstruction of justice. But federal prosecutors weren't finished. They had uncovered evidence of something much worse than obstruction. They had evidence of murder for hire. In September 2021, prosecutors added a charge of using interstate commerce in the commission of murder for hire, an offense that carries a potential death sentence. Jennifer Faith was facing the possibility of execution for her role in her husband's murder. But prosecutors offered her a deal: plead guilty and receive life in prison instead of the death penalty. And that the full scope of her deception was finally revealed. February 2022. Jennifer Faith stood before a federal judge and admitted to orchestrating her husband's murder. But her confession revealed details that were even more disturbing than investigators had imagined. She admitted that she had never been abused by her husband. The photos of injuries she had sent to Lopez were fake, downloaded from the internet, and used to manipulate a brain-damaged veteran into believing she was in danger. She admitted that she had used Lopez's military training and protective instincts against him. She had turned his desire to save her into a weapon of murder. She admitted that she had planned to use her husband's life insurance money to start a new life with Lopez in Tennessee. She had literally planned to profit from Jamie's death. But perhaps most disturbing of all, she admitted that she had been present during the murder. She had walked out of her home with her husband, knowing that Lopez was waiting to kill him. She had looked Jamie in the eye, knowing it would be the last time he saw her alive. The betrayal was complete. Jennifer Faith had convinced a vulnerable man to murder her husband, then played the grieving widow while secretly supporting the killer with money donated by people who believed she was a victim. But even in her confession, Jennifer couldn't stop lying. Even after admitting to the crime, she continued to send messages to Lopez claiming she had never deceived him. Just a quick note to say, I never lied to you, and I never sent you emails from any account but mine, as me. There's a ton more I wish I could say, but I can't right now. On June 21st, 2022, Jennifer Faith appeared before United States District Judge Jane J. Boyle for sentencing. The judge had reviewed all the evidence, heard all the testimony, and seen all the lies. What she said next would echo through the courtroom and define Jennifer Faith's legacy forever. Judge Jane J. Boyle looked directly at Jennifer Faith and delivered a judgment that captured the horror of her crimes. Pure evil. Those are the words the judge used to describe Jennifer Faith before sentencing her to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. She also ordered Jennifer to pay $6,500 in restitution to Jamie's family for funeral expenses and a $250,000 fine. U.S. Attorney Chad Meacham summed up the case perfectly. MS. Faith put on quite a performance in the wake of her husband's murder. She poured out her sob story to reporters and law enforcement, then headed home to orchestrate her cover-up. But crocodile tears didn't stop the feds. The Jennifer Faith case reveals something deeply disturbing about human nature. It shows how trust can be weaponized, how love can be manipulated, and how the people closest to us can sometimes be the greatest threat to our safety. Jamie Faith went to work every day, came home to his wife, and never suspected that she was planning his execution. He trusted her completely, and that trust cost him everything. Darren Lopez, the man who pulled the trigger, remains in custody facing both state murder charges and federal firearms charges. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges, but the evidence against him is overwhelming. In the end, Jennifer Faith's elaborate deception destroyed 3 lives: her husband's, her own, and that of the man she manipulated into becoming a killer. She turned love into a weapon and trust into a death sentence. So what can we learn from this case? Perhaps it's that the most dangerous predators aren't the ones who attack strangers in dark alleys. They're the ones who sleep beside us, who know our routines, who have access to our lives and our trust. Jennifer Faith will spend the rest of her life in federal prison, and Jamie Faith will never come home. A marriage that should have been built on love and trust instead became a monument to betrayal and murder. This has been True Crime Chronicles. Thank you for joining us for this investigation into one of the most shocking cases of spousal murder in recent memory. If you found this case as disturbing as we did, let us know in the comments below. What do you think motivated Jennifer Faith to orchestrate such an elaborate murder plot? And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the cases that shocked the world. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the greatest danger comes from the people we trust most. Picture this. A former ballerina, gun trembling in her hands, stands over her husband's bleeding body. She claims he tried to kill her. But within hours, investigators discover something that changes everything. This isn't just another case of domestic violence gone wrong. This is the story of Ashley Benefield, the woman the media dubbed the Black Swan, and the deadly performance that fooled almost everyone. Welcome to Crime Chronicle. Kindly subscribe if you are just seeing our channel for the first time, and on your notification bell. What you're about to hear challenges everything you think you know about victims and predators. Because sometimes the person crying self-defense is the real killer. September 27th, 2020. Manatee County, Florida. A quiet neighborhood where the only sounds should be sprinklers and distant traffic. But at 7:43 p.m., a neighbor's phone rings with a call that will expose one of the most calculated murders in recent history. I shot my husband in self-defense. Ashley Benefield tells the neighbor, standing at their doorstep with a .45 caliber pistol still at her hand. Her voice is shaking. She appears traumatized. Every detail seems to support her story of survival. But here's what investigators didn't know yet. Ashley Benefield had been planning this moment for months. Let me take you back to where this deadly dance began. Ashley was a former professional ballerina, trained in precision, control, and performance. At 28, she seemed to have found her Prince Charming in Doug Benefield, a 58-year-old businessman with a military background. They met at a political event in 2016, and what happened next defied all logic. They got married just 13 days after meeting. But fairy tales don't exist, and this marriage was about to become a nightmare, though not in the way you might expect. Within months, Ashley was claiming Doug was abusive. She filed for divorce, moved across state lines, and most importantly, she was pregnant with Doug's child. The custody battle that followed would become the foundation for murder. Here's where the story gets disturbing. Court documents reveal that Doug was fighting for joint custody of their daughter. For most fathers, this would be normal. For Ashley, it was unacceptable. Friends and family members would later testify that Ashley had made chilling statements. She couldn't bear the thought of sharing her daughter. Some witnesses claimed she said she'd rather Doug be dead than have visitation rights. But Ashley was smarter than that. She knew that simply wanting her husband gone wasn't enough. She needed a plan that would make her look like the victim. The plan was already in motion. For months leading up to that fatal September evening, Ashley had been building her case. She documented alleged incidents of abuse, though friends of Doug would later claim they never witnessed any violent behavior. She moved to South Carolina, claiming she feared for her safety. But here's the crucial detail that prosecutors would later use to unravel her story. Ashley had been carrying a loaded gun in her bra when she first met Doug back in 2016. This wasn't a woman who suddenly armed herself for protection. This was someone who had been prepared for violence from the very beginning. September 27th wasn't random. Doug had driven to South Carolina to pick up their daughter for court-ordered visitation. Ashley had agreed to meet him at a rental property she was supposed to be packing. But when Doug arrived, he wasn't there for a peaceful custody exchange. What happened next, according to Ashley, was an attack. She claimed Doug hit her, cornered her in a bedroom, and she had no choice but to reach for a gun. In her tearful testimony, she described firing in self-defense, claiming she told him to stop before pulling the trigger. But investigators were about to discover something that would turn this entire narrative upside down. When paramedics arrived at the scene, Doug Benefield was still alive. He couldn't speak due to his injuries, but he was conscious. And here's what investigators found that Ashley never expected them to notice. The physical evidence didn't match her story. The bullet trajectory, the blood spatter patterns, Doug's position, none of it supported a scenario where Ashley was cornered and firing in desperate self-defense. Instead, the forensic evidence suggested something far more calculated. Doug had been shot in the back. He was trying to leave when Ashley fired. But wait, it gets worse. Prosecutors discovered that Ashley had called a lawyer before she called 911. Think about that for a moment. A woman who had just survived a life-threatening attack from her husband's first instinct wasn't to get medical help for the man who was still dying on the floor. It was to protect herself legally. As Doug Benefield lay bleeding to death, Ashley Benefield was already building her defense. The investigation revealed a pattern of manipulation that spanned years. Ashley had been systematically isolating Doug from his family, making allegations that couldn't be corroborated and positioning herself as the perfect victim. Doug's daughter from a previous marriage testified that Ashley had been controlling and manipulative throughout their relationship. She described instances where Ashley would create conflicts and then play the victim when Doug responded in frustration. Most damning of all, investigators discovered that Ashley had been researching how to claim self-defense in domestic violence cases. Her internet history showed searches for legal precedents, successful self-defense claims, and the specific requirements needed to justify killing in self-defense. This wasn't a moment of panic or desperation. This was a premeditated murder disguised as survival. The jury heard 7 days of testimony. They saw the tears, the dramatic reenactments, the claims of abuse and fear. But they also saw the evidence that Ashley Benefield had killed her husband not to save her own life, but to save herself from sharing custody of their daughter. In July 2024, after more than 6 hours of deliberation, the jury reached their verdict, guilty of manslaughter. Not the self-defense acquittal Ashley had performed for, but not the first-degree murder conviction prosecutors had sought either. Ashley Benefield was sentenced to 20 years in prison. As the verdict was read, there was no smile, no satisfaction, just the cold reality that her deadly performance had finally ended. But here's what haunts investigators about this case. How many other Ashley Benefields are out there? How many people have weaponized the legitimate struggles of domestic violence survivors to commit murder? Doug Benefield's family says they'll never get closure. Their loved one died, believing his wife was the victim, never knowing that she was actually the predator who had been hunting him all along. The next time someone tells you a story that seems too perfect, too convenient, remember Ashley Benefield. Remember that sometimes the person claiming to be the victim is actually the one holding the smoking gun. What do you think? Could you have seen through Ashley's performance? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more cases that will challenge everything you think you know about justice. They were just 6 and 9, two sisters full of life, laughter, and trust. On May 2nd, 2001, Mary Faith and Liberty Battaglia were dropped off by their mother for what should have been a simple dinner with their dad. This is Crime Chronicle, where we review crime cases. Kindly subscribe if you haven't. Instead, they entered his deep Elm loft in Dallas and never came back out. Within minutes, he made a devastating move, placing a phone on speaker so their mother, Mary Jean, would hear every moment. Mary Faith, her voice trembling, was forced to ask, "Mommy, why do you want Daddy to go to jail?" Then came her final words, "No, Daddy, please don't," followed by a room full of gunfire. Mary struck 3 times, Liberty 5. After killing them, he didn't flee in panic. He calmly left a voicemail in their bedroom. "Good night, my little babies. You were very brave girls." And then walked casually into a tattoo parlor to mark their roses on his arm. What could transform a father's love into calculated violence? And how did he carry out such an act, then memorialize it in ink? On the other end of that call, their mother listened, frozen, helpless, as her daughters were taken. This is a story of trust betrayed, innocence extinguished, and a family shattered forever. This is Mary Faith Battaglia, age 10, an aspiring artist who loved drawing and horseback riding. Beside her, Liberty May, just 6, shy but bright, loved school and stories. On May 2nd, 2001, these sisters were dropped off at their mother's Dallas home, ready for an evening with their father. Their parents had been through a bitter separation and a custody dispute, one marked by escalating tension. Mary Jean, their mother, had filed for divorce after enduring verbal abuse and physical violence. Battaglia had assaulted not only her, but also his first wife, sending both to the hospital. Despite this violent past, he continued to see the girls regularly, visiting under a court-supervised schedule. But beneath a facade of fatherly care lay a threat no mother could ignore. Battaglia had been harassing and threatening Mary Jean, triggering concerns he might soon lose his privileges. That night at 6 p.m. in his deep Elm loft, a routine dinner ended in horror. 2 innocent children, less than 10 miles from home, became the victims of an unthinkable act. This wasn't a chance tragedy. This was personal. What breaking point led a father to transform a family visit into their final moments together? For the Battaglia girls, life with their father wasn't all tension. On weekends, they'd visit his deep Elm loft, greeted with art supplies and simple joys. Mary Faith, bright and creative, would capture the world in sketches. Liberty, quiet and sweet, would read aloud from her treasured storybooks at the dinner table. On the surface, it seemed like a father-daughter bond. But underneath, there were warnings. John Battaglia wasn't a stranger to violence. His first wife, Michelle Getty, testified he'd physically assaulted her multiple times, breaking her nose, cornering her, even punching strangers who crossed him. In 1999, days before Christmas, he attacked Mary Jean in front of the girls. He ended up on probation with a protective order banning contact with her. Even after the divorce in August 2000, the control didn't stop. Mary Jean filed for Battaglia's parole to be revoked. He'd been harassing her and violating probation. He texted and called obsessively. He threatened, "I'll kill you." He stalked her social media, and he promised revenge if he lost access to the girls. Bits of this surfaced in court. Mary Jean's tearful testimony, prosecutors' warning of his instability. Yet, despite these red flags, he retained unsupervised visitation rights. On May 2nd, 2001, he pulled up to Mary Jean's Highland Park home. The girls clambered into his car, excited for dinner. What they didn't know was that their mother's voice would soon be their only lifeline. The trip was short, just 10 minutes to the loft they'd come to think of as Dad's place. But as the sun set over downtown Dallas, a dark energy followed him there. What she didn't see, what no one did, was how far he was prepared to take his fury. On May 2nd, 2001, around 6 p.m., John Battaglia arrived at Mary Jean's home in Highland Park under the pretense of a family meal. The atmosphere was ordinary, and so was his tone when he greeted her. He knocked on the door. Mary Jean handed over the girls, smiling as they ran into his arms. But the routine shattered as soon as the door closed behind them. Inside that loft, everything turned. Neighbor Patricia Simmons would later say she heard raised voices. Had it been a domestic dispute? Or something else? Just moments later, other neighbors reported loud gunshots, the unmistakable sounds of trauma echoing through the evening air. In the courtyard below, one witness told police they heard shouting, like a frantic argument, immediately followed by 3 distinct bangs. Another swore it was a single crash, then rapid fire. These accounts would vary, but none could deny the horror unfolding above. From Mary Jean's phone, still connected on speaker. "No, Daddy, please don't." Mary Faith's voice cracked, as a burst of gunfire drowned out everything else. When the barrage stopped, a horrifying quiet settled, alive, then gone. Mary Jean terminated the phone call. She pressed 911. "Operator, 911, what's your emergency?" Mary Jean, "Choke, my husband, he shot our daughters. He shot them in the loft. Please send help." Her voice faltered, tears audible. She whispered their names, Faith, Liberty, please. In mere seconds, police raced to the scene. Inside, officers found both girls. Mary Faith lay motionless on the floor, 3 bullet wounds to her torso. Liberty, 5. No weapon was found at first. Battaglia had tossed it away. He remained inside, in the middle of the living room, wounded but eerily composed. The ambiguity of what happened before the shots fell would linger. Was there an argument? Or did he strike without warning? As responders cuffed him, Mary Jean stood helpless outside. She'd already borne witness to the unthinkable, by hearing when she could not see. At that moment, Mary Faith and Liberty were gone. On the tape of her 911 call, her voice pierces even now. They were so young, they didn't deserve this. This was no tragic accident. It was a calculated act, born of rage and revenge. Within minutes, detectives descended on the deep elm loft. They discovered gunshots fired from inside, the weapon still clutched in Battaglia's hand. Ballistics confirmed it was his gun. He'd fired all rounds himself. Forensic experts matched the shell casings and bullets directly to the father's pistol. Their fingerprints and gloves were bagged and analyzed. No third-party presence. This was a single-actor crime scene. Investigators used fingerprint and touch DNA techniques on the gun and magazine. Every trace pointed to Battaglia himself. More chilling, a voicemail left in the girl's bedroom after the murders. His voice calm, composed, almost boasting. Initial theories pointed to mental illness, depression, bipolar, walking a fine line of sanity. Yet detectives saw something clearer: revenge. This was an act born of anger, not psychosis. Battaglia himself admitted as much during the phone call, calmly stating, I shot them after Mary Jean pleaded on the line. He even taunted her with, "Merry fucking Christmas," referencing his prior Christmas assault, a personal attack disguised as family vengeance. Battaglia's legal team attempted to shift blame, citing therapy failures, character witnesses, mental health struggles. Custody documents became a battlefield, but every legal defense crumbled under forensic evidence and motive. The protective order he'd violated, the text messages with threats, these painted a man consumed by rage and control. Booked as an emergency call transcript, Mary Jean's recording captured it all. "Faith, ask your mother why she wants Daddy to go to jail." Then, through the gunfire, "I shot them," his own confession before he dropped the line. Battaglia was arrested, his weapon in hand, tattooed, roses visible. He offered no denial. But what he did next would stun even the arresting officers. The truth had always been buried in fragments, arguments, court papers, therapy transcripts. But what investigators discovered next wasn't a confession in the traditional sense. It was something colder, something calculated. Just moments before the final shot rang out, he picked up the phone and called their mother. Mary Jean Pearl answered the call, not knowing she was about to hear the final moments of her daughter's lives. Battaglia's voice was steady. "Ask your daughter Faith what she just said." In the background, Faith, just 10 years old, tried to speak. Then, the sound that would forever shatter Mary Jean's world. Gunshots. 2. Then silence. On that call, Battaglia delivered his final message to the woman he once claimed to love. "I killed them because you always win." This wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't confusion. It was revenge, deliberate, weaponized vengeance, carried out through the murder of his own children, designed specifically to inflict maximum suffering on their mother. Psychiatrists would later call it a textbook case of malignant narcissism. A man whose ego was so wounded he could not bear to lose control of his children, of his image, or of his ex-wife's life. But even among seasoned detectives, this wasn't just an act of control. He didn't just want to silence them. He wanted her to hear it. Was this just revenge? Or was something even darker at work? By the time John Battaglia stood trial, the facts were no longer in question. He admitted what he had done. The question now was why. The prosecution called it exactly what it was: calculated, vengeful murder. Not a man who snapped, a man who planned. He executed his daughters to punish his ex-wife. This was his final act of control. The defense leaned heavily on mental health. Diagnoses were introduced: bipolar disorder, depression, unresolved trauma. But the jury wasn't swayed. After weeks of testimony, the jury returned with a unanimous decision. John Battaglia was guilty of capital murder. He was sentenced to death. For years, Battaglia appealed the sentence. In 2018, 17 years after the murders, his time finally ran out. On February 1st, 2018, John Battaglia was executed by lethal injection. His last words? "Well, hi Mary Jean. I'll see y'all later. Bye." But for Mary Jean Pearl, the sentence didn't end the pain. She had already lost what mattered most. Her life, once public, now withdrawn, became a maze of locked doors, security cameras, and recurring nightmares. The community that once stood by in horror never forgot. A scholarship was created in the girls' names. Their school held vigils every May. But there was always a question no verdict could answer. Could this have been stopped? Mary Jean had warned the courts. She had called the police. She told the system he was dangerous. And still, he got unsupervised visitation. In her grief, Mary Jean became a voice for change. She pushed for stricter custody laws in cases involving abuse. And she never stopped saying their names. Mary Faith, Liberty May. Mary Faith loved horses. Liberty May adored school. Their futures were full of light. Until one man's darkness took it all away. The signs were there. There were police reports, custody battles, direct threats. "I'll kill you." He said it, and the system heard it, but let him in anyway. So we have to ask, was this preventable? Could tighter custody protections, better domestic violence response systems, mental health screenings have saved two young girls from an unspeakable fate? Battaglia's final words were meant to taunt, not to repent. This wasn't sudden. It was planned revenge through children against the woman he couldn't control. If someone tells you they're dangerous, believe them, because the next time, you might not get to warn anyone else. What role does untreated mental illness play in domestic violence? What are the responsibilities of the courts when someone shows every warning sign, but still gets a key to the front door? This case isn't just about one man's decision. It's about the holes in the system that let him make it. 2 daughters, shot by their father, while their mother listened on the phone. What do you think could have stopped this? Was this a failure of the courts, or a calculated act no system could have seen coming? Let us know your thoughts below. And if you believe no family should ever face this again, share this video to spread awareness. Subscribe for more true crime chronicle documentaries every week. Loudspeaker comment your thoughts.